This was a cold and calculated murder.
There's always a breaking point in an investigation.
The timeline of events didn't add up.
It was crucial we supported our family contact.
When I stood and looked at the house and I saw the flames coming out of the windows of the third floor, I knew my mum was in that room.
Inside the bedroom, it was an inferno. All the soft furnishings and the carpets and the curtains were ablaze.
The problem with house fires is that fire is a great destroyer of evidence.
I felt as if there was something wrong because how would everybody get out of the fire but not Amanda?
Having one of your children die is just awful. But to have one of your children murdered is unthinkable. I first met the Bates family when I was tasked to notify them of the tragic news that their daughter, Amanda Burks, aged 27, had been found deceased in a house fire. From that moment, I became their point of contact in a murder investigation. My name is Ian Mobbs, and I was a police family liaison officer, often referred to as a FLO with Staffordshire Police. The role of a FLO is crucial to a murder investigation because you act as a conduit between the family and the senior investigating officer. I think it's really important. Delivering death messages is an awful part of that job. Having to sit somebody down and tell them that a loved one is dead is extremely, extremely difficult.
The role of a family liaison officer is a relatively recent arrival in the criminal justice system.
Hello, DC Mobbs. House fire. Okay. Family liaison officer. Yeah, sure.
Certainly, that role did not exist when I started as a young barrister.
I'll get my stuff together and I'll come in.
It's assumed, rightly, much greater prominence as the years have passed by.
I was told that I was going to be the family liaison officer. My heart sunk a little that this was a fire because I instinctively knew that this could be quite a difficult case to crack. The problem with house fires is that fire is a great destroyer of evidence.
Emergency, which service?
At 2:15 on the morning of the 18th of January 2009, a man rang 999 and asked for the fire service. He said that his house was on fire. He said his children had escaped from the house with him, but he didn't know if his wife was still in the house upstairs. My name's Christopher Houghton, and I was, up until the end of 2017, a prosecution barrister. The neighbors could see flames shooting out of the upstairs windows of Christopher and Amanda Burke's house.
The family consisted of Amanda and Christopher, and they had two children. They had Jack, who was about 10, and they had little Millie, she was about 2.
When the fire service arrived at about 2:20, they found the house well ablaze. And so they did what fire officers do. They put on their breathing apparatus, and at considerable risk to themselves, they entered the house. They went up the stairs to find that the landing area was completely ablaze. They were very worried that the fire might have spread into the roof space and that the ceiling might collapse upon them. They managed to extinguish the flames on the landing, and they made their way into the bedroom. Inside the bedroom, it was an inferno. All the soft furnishings and the carpets and the curtains were ablaze. The fire service spent 2 or 3 minutes putting out the flames. It was then that they saw the body of Amanda Burks lying on the remnants of the bed. They were immediately struck by the peculiar position. She was lying in a star shape with her legs and arms spread out.
When I arrived at the scene, the fire was out. Because it's a crime scene, the area was cordoned off. Well, I wanted to know what the scene looked like, because I knew that at some point, the family will be asking me a lot of very searching questions. I just thought I need to get a complete understanding of what has transpired here. I needed to know the facts. When I entered the house, you wouldn't have known from the downstairs that there'd been a fire. There was no smoke damage. So I went to the first floor. There was some smoke damage, but not a great deal. But the third floor was completely gutted. There was nothing left. It was just a blackened shell. I entered the room where the body was found. It was very, very badly damaged. It just struck me as very, very unusual that somebody could just simply burn to death without waking up.
When somebody finds themselves caught or trapped in a fire, the natural instinct is to try and flee to a window or to a door. If they can't get out, the natural instinct is to curl into a ball with one's arms over one's head in a futile attempt to protect yourself from the flames. Lying on the bed in a star shape immediately aroused very considerable suspicion about the circumstances of this fire.
We treated the case as suspicious from the very off. We weren't happy with it.
It was quite late, I can't remember the time. They come and knock at the door, and it was Chris's brother. My name is Beverly Bates, and I'm the mother of Amanda Burks. And he said, the house is on fire. Amanda's house is on fire. And I just remember, I just went hysterical. I know I rang my mum, I was hysterical, and I rang my son, and I was hysterical on the phone to them. My husband says, I'll go up. My husband got up to the house. The road was cordoned off. He says, I just stood there. He says, I didn't know what to do. The police came across, and the policeman just turned to him and said, we've got a fatality and it's Amanda. Nobody told the police as Brian was Amanda's dad. And Brian was so much in shock, he didn't tell the police himself. He was traumatised. He just sat and cried. My mum and my sisters, their husbands and my brother, they'd all come round. And none of us had any answers. None of us really knew what was going on. You're in limbo thinking, what do we do?
I was the single point of contact for that family because they must have a million things running through their heads.
Didn't know what was going on, what happened to Amanda. And we didn't know where to get the answers from.
This family were absolutely distraught when I got there. Absolutely distraught.
When I first saw the liaison officers, it was a relief.
I introduced myself to the family. There was Beverly, Amanda's mother. Brian was Bev's husband.
The liaison officers that told us they would represent us and keep us informed as what went on with the investigation every step of the way.
Because I was an active part of the investigation as well, I was actually an investigating detective as well as being the family liaison officer. I was able to go back to this family and give them an accurate picture of everything we knew at that time. I said to them, I can't even begin to imagine what you're going through, because who can? And really, I think we sort of started to hit it off right there. It was clear that Amanda's family, Beverly and Barbara, were just such lovely people, and so was Brian. And they were a very, very close-knit family.
On the 17th, I'd been speaking to her during the daytime. I rang her and she was on the way back and she says, Mum, I can't talk to you because I'm driving. You can have an hour and I'll give you a ring later. Anyway, she never rang me later, so I thought she was tired or she was busy. And then it was later on, at the night time. I think I can't remember, I tried ringing and I got no answer, so I texted her. And I got a message, having a nice aromatherapy. Chris just took the kids out. So I rang Chris and I said, have you took the kids out? He says, yeah. So I texted Amanda again and said, you're having a aromatherapy night? And she said, yes. So we were texting backwards and forwards between me and Amanda. All of a sudden the taxi stopped.
You need to see if there's anything you've gained forensically from the crime scene. The fire was in the bedroom. I actually recovered a piece of carpet from that room.
The scientists examined the carpet and discovered that the carpet was highly fire resistant. They were sure this had not been a smouldering, slow burning fire. They were satisfied that this was a fire started with the use of some form of accelerant. A fire, in other words, that had been deliberately set. Also, there was a smoke alarm on the second floor landing. That smoke alarm was found detached from the wall and lying propped against the skirting board and the floor. It wasn't damaged in any way by fire. As we all know, smoke rises and it's near the ceiling that it will be first detected. And the conclusion was that that had been removed either immediately before or at the very early stages of the fire, so that when the fire brigade did get there, the fire had taken a considerable hold.
My initial briefing was that we didn't know where the children were. I wanted to see that they were safe and well, and I wanted to establish if they were witnesses and if they could help us with the inquiry. I managed to track the children down to Christopher, the husband's mum and dad's house. Christopher was in the house. I introduced myself the same as I always would, that I'm the family liaison officer. Christopher said that Amanda was relaxing and she had some kind of bath, like an aromatherapy bath. And then she retired to bed with candles.
His account was that he had left his wife in the house on her own when he went out in the evening with the children for a meal.
He said he had been texting Amanda throughout the evening.
He'd returned and assumed that she was upstairs, but didn't know for certain. And the next thing he knew, he was awoken by the fire alarm.
The one thing that I took away from that meeting was Christopher's attitude. If he'd lost his wife in a fire, I would have expected him to be devastated. But he wasn't. He just simply wasn't. I found Christopher's behaviour extremely odd. I became very uncomfortable with the situation. I was absolutely convinced that I didn't want these children in this house. They were numb, quite frankly. Millie, Amanda's daughter, she was very young, and I don't think she quite understood what was going on. But Jack did. And they came across to me as being just utterly, well, Jack was just numb. It was clear to me that whilst Amanda's family were rightly so devastated, Christopher wasn't. And, you know, that's not normal, surely. In order to identify the victim, normally you would invite the family to the mortuary and you'd do a physical identification. That wasn't possible in this instance because Amanda was terribly, terribly burnt.
They were going to try identify Amanda through her dental records, and I gave them the address and the phone number of the dentist Amanda used.
It was very difficult to support the family through this because Beverly had an overwhelming desire to see her daughter, which is understandable, but she couldn't.
I was told I couldn't actually go and see her, but I could go and hold her hand through a blanket, but we wouldn't be able to see her body. That was really hard. I refused to do that, not because I didn't want to do it, but I knew if I went and touched her hand through a blanket, I'd want to pull the blanket off.
This was about a relationship between Amanda Burks and her husband, Christopher. They met at the end of the 1990s when Amanda was 18 and Chris was 21.
They met on a night out. She just says, I've met this lad and he's really nice. She'd been out with him a few times, she brought him home. That first meeting with him, he seemed like a nice lad. He was polite. He's a charmer. It developed quite quick. Within 12 months of meeting him, they'd moved in together.
That led in the year 2000 to the birth of their elder child, Jack.
My name is Jack Bates, and I'm the son of Amanda Burks. The night of the 17th, Chris picked me up. We ended up going to 10-pin bowling on some of the arcade machines, and then he took us to McDonald's and then back home, where we sat in at our McDonald's. I went up to go to the 3rd floor to see what my mum was doing, and Chris quickly come running to me and brought me back down before I got to the 3rd floor and said, no, leave your mum. She's having a relaxing time. She doesn't want to be bothered by kids. She'll come into the bedroom later when you're asleep and she'll give you a kiss. After that, he put us in our pajamas and he put us into his bed, which felt weird to me that night. Why won't I go into my own bed? Why am I going into his bed? The smoke alarm started going off and I woke up straight away. And Chris was already out of the bed, standing up, and the room was filling with black smoke. He then told us to go and sit in the ensuite of the master bedroom, which we did, until the smoke was getting a bit too much and we went out onto the landing. At that point, he was banging on the door, the bedroom door, for the 3rd floor, shouting my mother's name. At that point, the smoke was getting even worse, so I took Amelia step by step down to the 1st floor, and we went into the living room until smoke started coming through the fireplace. And at that point, I exited the house. The front door was already unlocked. The whole street was lit up with an orange glow from the fire. Flames were coming out the roof, and the driveway was covered in glass from the windows blowing, and I could see the flames coming out of the roof. When I stood and looked at the house and I saw the flames coming out of the windows of the 3rd floor, I knew my mum was in that room. I knew by looking at the house that she wouldn't survive.
Despite the fact that Amanda's body was very severely burnt, the scientists and the pathologists recovered some very important evidence. When somebody is trapped in a smoke-filled environment, what one should discover in the airways and the lungs are traces of soot. Amanda's lungs and airways were examined and no traces of soot were found. That must mean that she was not breathing at any time that fire took place. The other thing they would have expected to find were traces of cyanide and carbon monoxide, which are both byproducts of the fire, but there is no trace of either of those in her blood. A person who is exposed to the extreme heat of a fire like this will find that the muscles of their body contract such that it appears that the body is in a fighting stance, as though they are crouched and with their arms out in front of them. Amanda's body was found in this odd star shape, indicating very strongly that she was not alive when the fire took place.
As soon as I became aware of what the autopsy results were, I obviously informed the family, and this was distressing for them.
Amanda was released from the coroners to the undertakers. We used to go down in the undertakers, and up until the funeral, they used to put Amanda's coffin in a room, and I used to go and sit with her there and talk to her there.
She was clearly the brains of the outfit. She was the go-getter. She was the worker. She put the business plans together, and she had helped to set up all of the businesses that the family had had. She really, really was such a good, hard-working lady.
So I used to say to her about how hard she worked. And she says, "Mum, I'm doing it for my kids. Just because I want my kids to have a stable future."
When I was growing up, I always felt the closest to my mum. She was always loving, compassionate, always a shoulder to cry on whenever I got upset. I'm in the kitchen with my mum and my sister making cakes. Mum would have her music on and we'd all sit at the table decorating the cakes, and that was good memories.
Jack came across to me as being a very, very intelligent young man. He was clearly very articulate for one his age, and he was able to communicate with me really very well. He wanted to tell me something on one particular occasion while I was around the house. He said, "I've got something to say to you." And I said, "Okay." So he stood there and I sat on the bottom step of the stairs so that I was now at exactly his level, because I wanted him to feel comfortable with me. I wasn't trained to do this. This is just something that I've picked up over the years, that children communicate more freely when the adult they're speaking to isn't actually towering over them. He wanted to tell me on that day that when his father took them out, he was extremely, extremely anxious and very, very nervy. Jack explained to me that at one point he kicked a football so hard that he burst it, and that he was in literally a quite manic state of mind. He was helping a lot, and I always thanked him for his input.
A family liaison officer is very important in ensuring that the victims, and in this case, the victims' loved ones, remain central to the investigation and are never forgotten or ignored in the course of an investigation. An important element of Christopher's story was obviously that Amanda had been engaged in an aromatherapy evening. Her mother was quite clear that if Amanda was going to have an aromatherapy evening, she would change out of her ordinary day clothes and into her night clothes. When Amanda's body was examined, recovered from it were traces of a green sweater and part of the underwiring of a bra. CCTV footage taken at the premises occupied by the company that Amanda and Christopher owned showed that Amanda was wearing that same green sweater earlier in the day. She had not changed her clothing since the morning of the 17th. And that really undermined the suggestion that Amanda had been involved in some sort of aromatherapy session.
When they first moved in together, everything seemed fine. But then there seemed to be a lot of arguments.
It was a stormy relationship.
He was being really horrible, he was shouting, he was violent. Nearly every week she'd ring me up and we'd have to go up. She'd come home for a few days, then he'd work his way around, then she'd go back. So it was just like a vicious circle.
On many occasions, the police were called to their home, but generally, Amanda would either refuse to complain, or if she did complain, would be persuaded by Christopher later to withdraw her complaints.
The violence was just continual. He used to always go for bashing her head in the wall, or marking on the body where you can't see. He never went for marking her face, so there was never any physical, as anybody else could see. My mum always used to say to Amanda, you need to get out. One of these days he's going to kill you. She thought the problem was herself. She didn't think the problem was him because he'd put it into her mind as it was her. With domestic violence, they always make you feel as if it's your fault. They can turn the tables, that if you hadn't to push the buttons, it wouldn't have happened. So every time anything happened, she used to feel as if it was her fault. It's control, they control you. Amanda would try and shield the kids from the domestic violence, but I don't think she could actually shield them that much.
I can remember lots of rowing, and I can remember him hitting my mum every day. It was like walking on eggshells sometimes, and I know my mum was walking on eggshells too, because you say the wrong thing to him and he's going to be kicking off. Like whenever there was a row or anything, she didn't want me around. She used to send me out the room and stuff, but I'd always get back in. I didn't want him hitting my mum. You want to stick up for your mum, but again, you're sticking up against a fully grown man when you're only a child yourself, so it's kind of hard. I noticed sometimes when I went to friends' houses that their mum and dad were always loving with each other, but my dad, Chris, was always vile to my mother.
He wanted to control everything she did, where she went, wanted to control what friends she spoke to, whether she went out, whether she stayed in, if she come to my house. He was constantly on the phone when he wasn't with her, seeing where she was. There was one time she got out of the relationship. She'd moved back home with us, and then she got a house. And she moved in the house, and she got Amelia as a baby that time. So she got Jack and Amelia, and she'd moved in this house, and she was quite happy. The day of Amelia's christening, they decided we'd be amicable. We'll have the christening together. So she did the christening, then she went home, and he should have gone home. She'd let him in, and he'd started arguing with her, and he'd literally broke things all in the bedroom. Jack had gone upstairs, and he was upstairs with Amelia.
He kicked off and smashed the house up, hit my mum, and the police ended up coming and he was arrested.
He wanted to get back together and she'd said no. So that's when he'd lost his temper and he's swept everything off the dressing table in the bedroom and throwing stuff around. Amanda had phoned the police. She tried backtrack out to that, but I think the police insisted as they went through with it at that time.
This time, the case did go to court, and amongst the penalties that were imposed upon Christopher, he was required to attend a domestic abuse program.
And it was kind of after he'd been through the court, he was saying, well, I've got all this, it's all in place, and that's when she moved back with him. They got through Christmas okay, but Amanda decided she wanted out of the marriage. And they were still together in the house, but living separate, because it was a 3-story house and she was sleeping in the top floor.
Amanda's family had informed me that Amanda had been texting Beverly, Amanda's mum, on a regular basis throughout the evening.
Because then with the last messages I had off Amanda, I felt as if I needed to cherish them messages. And I'd pick the messages up when I'm reading through them and I just said, the messages don't seem right.
When I was in the house and Bev showed me her mobile phone, I could see the text messages were there, and then she showed me text messages that she'd had from Amanda.
Me and Amanda have always put 3 little kisses, and the 3 little kisses that aren't there. A good while ago, I'd sent Amanda a message, and I'd only put 2, and she sent a message back and asked where the other kiss was. So it was kind of a family thing. We put 3 little kisses.
That's something I obviously passed on to my senior investigating officer straight away. He brought in a linguistic expert to look at the text messages that were on Beverly's phone. And they concluded that these text messages had not come from Amanda. And that prompted him to do the phone analysis.
They confiscated Chris's phone. They managed to get some information off Amanda's phone.
The telephone records for Amanda should show that phone calls were being made from or in the vicinity of the house. His records should show that he was elsewhere with the children, having a meal.
And it turned out that, no, they weren't. Christopher's mobile phone and Amanda's mobile phone were travelling together.
The only conclusion that could be drawn from that was that they were both in the possession of Christopher Burks, and that completely destroyed his assertion that it was his wife who was using her mobile telephone in the early evening of the 17th of January.
My senior investigating officer informed me that he had sufficient evidence now to arrest and charge Christopher. The evidence was that clearly Amanda was dead before the fire broke out. And the evidence of the phones travelling side by side, Christopher's and Amanda's together, was damning. And then you've got the linguistic expert putting absolutely no doubt on the validity of the messages. Now, this left me in an awkward position because the kids were still with Chris's family. As I spent more and more time with Amanda's family, it became clear that these were by far the best guardians for these children, by far. I persuaded the senior investigating officer to not arrest Christopher until the kids were at Amanda's mum and dad's. This he agreed to, and thankfully when Christopher was arrested, Beverly had the kids.
The police arrested him and charged him with murder.
I felt vindicated. I had suspected from day one that Christopher was responsible for Amanda's murder. We prepared Amanda's family for court.
They took us around the court. They explained everything, what was going on.
Seeing the courtroom for the first time was quite an intimidating place to be, as I've never seen anything like that before, and I was only a child, and seeing this big, grand building was quite daunting.
I said I'd take them there, and I would bring them back, and I would stay with them all day through the court proceedings, so that I could still provide support and comfort during the court process. I told them that obviously Christopher was going to be in court and that they'd see him. They understood that as well.
The evidence against Christopher Burks was overwhelming, which is no doubt why on the first day the case was listed for trial, Christopher Burks changed his plea from not guilty to guilty and acknowledged for the first time that he was responsible for the death of his wife.
There was no flicker of emotion on that man's face when he admitted his guilt. Christopher Burks came across to me as possibly the most emotionless, soulless man I've ever met. He was absolutely as cold as ice.
The liaison officers come over to the house and broke the news to me that it was in fact Chris that had murdered my mum and set the house on fire. I stormed out the room. I was a bit in denial at first because I just couldn't believe that he would do that.
Jack was just devastated because he didn't think as he'd done it. He couldn't understand why.
It was hard to process because how do you process that your dad's killed your mum? So it's kind of a hard thing to get your head around. And then for him to light the house on fire as well, that it was very hard for me to get my head around.
When he found out that his father had admitted killing his mother, I think that's the day he lost his dad. But I was so glad when Chris pleaded, because I knew now that the kids were going to be staying with Amanda's family.
The day that I found out that I was going to live with my Nana Bev and my granddad Brian was one of the best days ever. My Nana Bev, she's helped me through the most hardest times throughout my life. She's my guardian angel.
Once Christopher Burks had pleaded guilty, then the landscape of the case changed completely. The judge adjourned sentence to a later date that I came back to court and told the judge and the public at large about the circumstances of the case. The state of the body after the fire was such that the pathologist was not able to establish a precise cause of death. Only Christopher Burks knows why he murdered his wife. It's perfectly possible and probably likely that he killed her by strangling her. Again, Amanda's body was found in this odd star shape. Her muscles did not contract because she had been dead probably for 15 hours. And so rigor mortis would have set in, and that would have prevented the muscles contracting in the way they would have done if she died in the fire. The likelihood is that at around 11 o'clock in the morning, there was a quarrel between them over her decision to end the marriage, and that he lost his temper and then strangled her. During the afternoon and evening of the 17th of January, Christopher Burks used Amanda's mobile telephone to send and receive text messages, trying to create the impression that she was still alive.
I was devastated. I clung on to their messages, thinking they were the last things, the last bits of communication we had between each other. And then find out it wasn't who sent them and it was him. I was just absolutely devastated.
One of the things that he said in those text messages was that Amanda was spending the evening in the house having what he called, and what she would have called, an aromatherapy evening. And he used this to give the impression that she would have lit candles both in the bathroom and in her bedroom. The object of this, obviously, was to create the impression that the fire may have started as a result of a candle toppling over, perhaps when Amanda had fallen asleep. Christopher's objective, after he had murdered his wife, was to try and destroy her body, and in destroying it, destroy the evidence of how she'd met her death. He decided the best way that he could do that was by setting a fire in the bedroom upstairs. What he did was to detach the smoke alarm on the landing of the upstairs floor from the wall and place it on the floor in the correct belief that it would not go off until the fire had taken a real hold. He had to delay calling 999 for as long as possible. He couldn't have the police, the fire brigade, the neighbors arrive too soon to find Amanda's body still relatively intact, so that when the fire brigade did get there, the fire had taken a considerable hold. The fire service asked Christopher if there was anybody in the house, and he told the fire service his wife may well be inside the house on the upper floor. He, of course, knew that his wife was in the house, but that she was dead.
The judge went away to chambers where he clearly deliberated over the sentence. And so it was actually quite late on in the day when he actually read out the sentence. The courts had basically closed. Chrissy's legal team were arguing that they could come back on Monday to sentence Christopher. And the judge was adamant. He said that justice had to be seen and justice had to be seen to be done, and that he had no intention of delaying this over the weekend, and that Christopher was going to be sentenced that night. And so he did.
Christopher was sentenced to life imprisonment. The minimum term was one of 19 years.
Hi, it's lovely to see you. It's a long time no see.
Oh, Doc.
I'm extremely grateful to Ian for everything. I think the liaison officers are important in any murder investigation. They kept the family from falling apart. They actually stopped us from sinking.
Working with you was without doubt the most rewarding thing I ever did as a police officer.
I don't think we could have got through as well as we did without you.
Yeah.
Definitely wouldn't. That first knock at the door when you come to the door,
Yeah.
it was a relief.
Yeah.
It was a relief to have somebody there for talk to, because at that point we were just in limbo.
Obviously, I can remember you when I was a child, but now I'm an adult. It's a pleasure to meet you.
I've FLO'd other families since, but nothing compares to FLOing you lot. Yeah, you meant the world to me. You really did. And I'm just so glad I could have helped.
The family liaison officers were absolutely... I don't know where we'd have been without them.
This has been in my wallet since the day you gave it me. Do you remember it?
Yes, I can now.
It's beautiful.
Thank you for your kindness. Thank you for showing... Can you read it? Just gets at me a bit.
Hey?
Thank you
just
for
gets
your
up there.
kindness, and thank you for showing that you care. It's hard to find the right words to say how much you've touched my heart. I want you to know that what you did really meant a lot to me. I want to say a big thank you from the depths of my heart. I appreciate what you've done, and I truly, truly thank you.
Oh, beautiful.
You were a beautiful person.
Oh, thank you.
You're making me go now.
I know.
Hey?
Nobody realises, do they?
No.
Just how much
No.
it affects your life. He served his sentence. We'll never, ever finish our sentence.
No.
Never.
Thank you for helping me and my family.
Yeah.
My nan, my great nan, my granddad, and the whole family.
Yeah.
Couldn't thank you enough.
That's all right, mate. Been a privilege.